Right now at 5 on WHAS 11 News, an early summer heat wave is gripping Kentuckiana. And with it, we are speaking with an emergency room doctor for you tonight. People are trying to stay cool and out of this dangerous heat.
Plus, the second trial in the Crystal Rogers murder case starts tomorrow. We're taking a look ahead at what to expect.
And then live at 5:30, he was one of the first fighter pilots to bomb Baghdad in Operation Desert Storm, flying more than 100 combat missions. Retired Brigadier General Rob Gibbons of Louisville is joining us live to talk about today's counterstrikes by Iran. WHAS 11 News at 5 begins right now.
First, right now at 5, heat advisories are in effect for Kentuckiana.
A lot of sunshine out there, as you can see from our live camera, looking at the widest section of the Ohio River, a mile wide right there at the falls. The heat index is going to be parked over 100 degrees, folks, until Sunday. It is very dangerous weather, and we're going to be talking about it for you a lot this week. Hello, everybody. On this extremely hot Monday, I'm Doug Proffitt.
And I'm Connie Leonard. It sure is. And Julie Martin is filling in for Chief Meteorologist Mallory Snell today. Some heavy downpours in some areas this afternoon. Let's go over to Julie now.
Well, the heat is the big story, Connie and Doug, and right now we are under a heat advisory here in Orange. We did hit 95 today in Louisville, just shy of that record of 98 degrees, but this is really just the beginning. So we are under a weather alert impact through Thursday. We're talking high heat and humidity. Going to need to stay very hydrated, very cool, as cool as possible anyway, in this oppressive heat. Taking a look at our current temperatures, sitting at 95 right now, our high, 95 in Scottsburg and 93 in Bardstown. But those feels like temperatures right now, well, those aren't very pleasant. 110 here in Corydon, 100 in Louisville, 103 in Scottsburg, and 106 in Bedford. That's because it's so humid. So you factor in the humidity, and that's what it feels like on your skin. And that is a big concern because the heat, the humidity, it's going to be ongoing, and it's not really turning off at night either. Take a look at this, dipping down to 78 degrees. That's near 80 degrees by the time you go to bed tonight. So if you don't have air conditioning, a very uncomfortable night potentially for you. You want to have a way to get out to get your body cool. Get into a cooling center, a shopping mall, a library. Go somewhere, at least during the daytime, where you can get some air conditioning. Through Thursday, we will stay in the mid to high 90s. Start to see the temperatures back off a bit as we wrap up the week and head into the weekend. I'll detail more on that coming up in your full forecast in just a moment. Connie.
All right. Thanks, Julie. Since the beginning of the month, at least 31 people used emergency medical services for heat-related illness here in Louisville.
And with a breakdown of the risks hot weather brings and some ways to stay cool, WHAS 11's Ian Hardwick has the story.
His music's cool, but the weather's hot, feeling like 100 degrees.
It's a little sweltering heat, and it's going to get worse later on, but as long as I'm in the shade, I'm fine.
Charles Bundrink keeps out of the sun in Chickasaw Park basically all summer long, switching between water and Gatorade for electrolytes. The sweat rolls down even in the hospital district's shade, but sweat's a good sign. U of L Health ER Dr. Evan Kuhl knows the warning signs of an incoming heat stroke.
Our skin is flushed, we're not sweating anymore. That can be a significant concern, but it can be mild, like maybe you're just a little nauseous. Maybe you don't feel like drinking that water you're trying to hydrate with.
So he says to look out for your coworkers or teammates outside who might be slowing down.
You can have muscle breakdown from heat exposure, heat stroke. You can have seizures. All of those things can cause long-term damage to your kidneys, to your heart, and to your brain.
Dr. Kuhl says this is one of the best ways to stay cool, all that water evaporating off your skin like sweat, taking that warm air with it. But he also had another tip, drinking water before you actually need it, before you're hot and before you're thirsty.
If we're having darker urine, then I worry that we're not keeping up.
And for people without air conditioning, churches in New Albany are opening their doors this week. Park Christian Church is the first of the season.
We're a small church. We don't have a lot of resources, but we have space. So I think giving back to our community is a really big part of what our church is.
And a big part of this summer is it heats up. Ask Bundren about it, though, and he'll tell you. Picture glaciers and waterfalls.
I just have to think cooler thoughts.
Cooler thoughts, harder to come by as an early heat wave settles in. In Louisville, Ian Hardwick, WHAS 11 on your side.
Those cooling centers in New Albany stay open from 2 until 7. Tomorrow, Culbertson Baptist also opens its doors. You can also find a list of Louisville cooling centers on our website, WHAS11.com.
We are right now just 1 week shy of the 10-year mark of the disappearance of Crystal Rogers in Bardstown. The man accused of killing her is now going to soon face a jury.
This time tomorrow, jury selection will be underway in the Crystal Rogers case. Brooks Houck and Joseph Lawson are being tried together. Houck is charged with murder and tampering with physical evidence. Joseph Lawson is charged with conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence. Joseph's dad, Steve Lawson, was tried on the same charges 3 weeks ago as his son and convicted on both. Jury selection moved quick at his trial, but our legal expert, Nick Mudd, believes attorneys could be more strict about juror knowledge of the case this time around.
I do think there's a lot more publicity regarding specifically Brooks Houck. So maybe they do it in 1 day still, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with the jury selection. It'll be more interesting to see because I think the defense this time will be prepared going in with legal arguments to say, no, Judge, you got to strike them completely if they've heard about this.
The trial is being held in Bowling Green, about 90 miles from Bardstown. Jury selection begins at 9 a.m. That's Central Time, Tuesday morning.
It is the trial of the decade for this area. No story has captivated us all more than the Bardstown murder mysteries for the past 10 years. The trial of the man named as the chief suspect long ago, Brooks Houck, and alleged accomplice Joseph Lawson will begin tomorrow in Bowling Green. No cameras once again, but our team has 2 seats in the courtroom. And starting tomorrow, WHAS 11 News legal analyst Nick Mudd will be back. He's going to join us nightly here live at 5:30. We'll be talking to him every night. And then at 9 p.m. to break down the key moments. Download the WHAS 11 Plus app to watch our special broadcast every night during the trial at 9 p.m. Download on your TV and watch for free.
A man is charged with murder after a deadly bar fight in Okolona Sunday. 28-year-old Christopher Foley pleaded not guilty to the crime this morning. Now, a judge set his bond at $250,000. He's due back in court next Tuesday, July 1st. LMPD responded to the Corner Tavern off Preston Highway and Mount Washington Road early Sunday morning. Found a man with life-threatening injuries. According to arrest records, witnesses told police that Foley was angry about money, threw the victim to the ground and hit him repeatedly. That victim later died at the hospital.
Well, a manhunt is underway for an escaped inmate right here in Kentucky. We're talking about 28-year-old Jared Barnes from Elizabethtown, reportedly walked away from the Bluegrass Career and Development Center in Madison County, Kentucky on Sunday. Barnes was serving a sentence for several charges, including drug-related offenses and engagement in organized crime. He's described as 5 feet 9 inches tall, 206 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes and several tattoos on his chest and arms. He was last seen wearing a white tank top, black sweatpants, and white tennis shoes. If you have any information about his location, Barnes' location, call local law enforcement or the Kentucky State Police at post number 7. Their number is 859-623-2404. Barnes is known to frequent Elizabethtown, Jefferson County, Hardin, and surrounding counties.
Defendants known as the Rathon 5 headed into their first day of trial this morning, charged with trespassing at a local military weapons manufacturing complex in February of last year. The company creates and supplies missiles and radar systems to the U.S. military. Gabriel Gonzalez was with the defendants moments before the trial started.
We all have a place in this movement, and each is incredibly valuable. And we have a moral obligation to do everything in our capacity to disrupt and ultimately end the flow of capital and weapons to Israel.
Now, that trial is expected to last at least 3 days. If convicted, the group could face up to 90 days in jail, but attorneys for the 5 say that is not likely.
Today, Iran retaliating against the United States. Iran firing a barrage of missiles towards American troops stationed in Qatar, and Iran fired missiles at an air base right there.
It's the largest U.S. air base in the Middle East, home to 10,000 American troops. It's the same base President Trump visited last month and where the attack against Iran would have been controlled from. Now, a U.S. official confirms none of the missiles hit the base.
It really is the heartbeat of the Middle East in terms of our presence there and the use of air forces, and certainly have been supporting the Iran attack. You know, they have been well prepared to receive this. They're well defended.
Iran says it used the same number of missiles against the United States that the U.S. used against them on Saturday night. President Donald Trump calling the attack weak and said Iran had alerted the U.S. before targeting the base. The U.S. Embassy in Qatar told Americans this morning in that country to shelter in place until further notice.
And here at home, there's concern over what further retaliation could be coming and whether this means U.S. involvement in a prolonged war.
Well, since the surprise Saturday night bombing, we've been getting local reaction. Today, Isaiah Kim Martinez is talking to rabbis at Louisville synagogues about this. And Isaiah, are they concerned that this could now widen into a bigger war?
Doug, that is one of the biggest concerns. And they tell me every community loses if this war escalates, all countries here. That's also the message from that group in Louisville we heard from earlier in this newscast, protesting Rathon. They also touched on the topic of Iran, too.
The protests will continue because the genocide continues, the bombing continues.
Signs of no war with Iran seen in Jefferson Square Park in Louisville as Iran responds to U.S. strikes on their nuclear sites with its own missile attacks on American military bases in Qatar and Iraq.
I think really it's a combination of the potential for prolonged conflict and the potential for many, many more lives lost.
Rabbi Ben Fried, who has loved ones in Israel, is concerned for what could come next.
The fear of retaliation is not just about me personally, it's about my friends, my family, and just my co-religionists, my other Jews that I care for deeply.
Rabbi Matt Derenbacher hopes Iran's latest strike on American targets was more symbolic, indicating they want to de-escalate.
My deepest hope is that's the end of the fighting and the warfare, and we can actually move on to some peace talks and de-escalation.
Dr. Robert Farley, senior lecturer at UK and an expert on diplomacy and national security, tells me Iran's response could mean they want an off-ramp, but it's not clear yet the attacks are over.
They also have options with terrorism, they have militias, they have a lot of different ways of hitting the U.S. and U.S. interests, both in the region and around the world. But you know, just because they have those capabilities doesn't mean that they're going to use them.
Now, in a statement, Louisville Congressman Morgan McGarvey condemned the Iranian attack against the U.S. air base in Qatar. He said on behalf of all Louisvillians, he's fighting to ensure American safety and security, and he says their top priority is peace and, quote, not another endless war. Doug, Connie.
All right, thank you, Isaiah. Retired Brigadier General Rob Givens, a fighter pilot who flew more than 100 combat missions, including the Middle East, is joining us live at 5:30 to tell us what to expect next from Iran.
He has personal knowledge about that for sure. Now, the conflict with Iran could also have a major impact on oil and gas prices in the United States. Today, oil prices are down, but that could change quickly if Iran decides to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. ABC's Melissa Adan explains.
The U.S. strikes against Iran over the weekend may impact oil and gas prices around the world and in the U.S. President Trump posting this today on social media saying, everyone, keep oil prices down. I'm watching. You're playing right into the hands of the enemy. Don't do it. Iran is threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, a vital waterway between Iran and Oman, where 20% of the world's oil passes through daily. While there has not been a surge in oil prices in the U.S. so far, at the pump this morning, the national average is $3.22. Gas Buddy is forecasting as high as $3.50 a gallon in the days ahead.
Oil prices will continue to move depending on the actions of what happened in the Middle East. If there's a slight shift in the risk calculus, that could send oil up. If there are de-escalations, that could send oil back lower again.
If Iran were to close the Strait of Hormuz for an extended time, Goldman Sachs believes oil prices could soar above $100 a barrel. It's at about $75 now. Iran has made that threat before, but never followed through because oil is a huge driver of its own economy, funding the country's military and security. While only a small amount of oil the U.S. uses travels through the strait, up to 50% of China's oil imports come from Iran.
China is really the only large purchaser of Iranian crude oil, which has been heavily sanctioned by many other countries. That's why Iran is now so reliant on China. So to upset China would also inflict even more damage onto Iran's economy.
Analysts believe any oil price spike would not last long, as the U.S. Navy could likely intervene to keep the strait open, as seen in the 1980s during the Iran-Iraq War. Melissa Adon, ABC News, Los Angeles.